We have. Yeah. All right. Yeah. A little confusing. Good evening, City Council special meeting. It's Monday, November 15th. No. Good evening, the City Council special meeting will come to order. Please, pursuant to the July 17th order from the County of Los Angeles Department of Public Health, face masks must be worn by all persons regardless of vaccination status while in the council chambers. There will be a designated area in the lobby to accommodate members of the public who do not wish to be seated in the council chambers and desire to remain masked and socially distanced regardless of the vaccination status. Temporary accommodations due to COVID. As a standing accommodation to ensure participation of those with sensitive or other risk conditions, the city will offer a nearby alternate location where individuals who desire to participate at the council meeting and would desire to wear face masks, maintain 6 feet of distance, and ensure that those around them are also similar to be protected regarding a vaccination status may watch the meeting. Such individuals will be allowed to remain in the area only if they comply with these requirements. To participate in oral communications, such individuals will be called, can proceed to the public speaking podium and address the City Council, and are able to return to the fully masked and socially distanced location with minimal exposure to unmasked individuals. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oral communications. Members of the audience are invited to address the City Council on any item on this agenda or not on this agenda. Public comments will be taken during each individual agenda item, except for public hearing items. Comments on public hearing items that will be heard when that item is scheduled for discussion. Under the provisions of the Brown Act, the legislative body is prohibited from engaging in discussion or any item not appearing on this posted agenda. However, your concerns may be referred to a staff or set up for discussion at a later date. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Due to the importance of this particular meeting, I've opted to extend the public comments to 5 minutes. So
there, I just wanted to make sure. So if somebody has comments on the maps, they're not going to
anything and on anything at all. Their time to talk is going to be
now.
And
Got it.
So because of that issue, I'm going to make that 5 minutes, and then we'll open up for the business at hand.
The first speaker card turned in is from Betty Jean Lamb, speaking on election districts.
Okay. Ms. Lamb?
Good evening. The law requires council to adopt district boundaries using the following criteria in order of priority. have geographical continuity, minimize division of communities of interest, be geographically compact. Avoidance of head-to-head contest may be considered when reasonable and also meets primary criteria. Instead, council has picked maps that divide communities of interest, Old Town, Villa Verde, and Walnut Creek, are not geographically compact and ignore closer areas, are not continuous, and are funny shaped. These districts don't really provide an opportunity for adequate, fair, and equitable representation of all the city's voters as required by law. As such, if council adopts one of their favorite maps, I think they will be doing a great disservice to the city's residents, probably violate the law, and open the city to a court challenge to their district map. I request that council take a closer look at map 105 drawn by the Latino Roundtable NAACP. I think their map has value and should be taken seriously, and its pros and cons fully discussed publicly by the consultant and council. Map 105 meets state criteria and avoids putting the two current councilmen that live in Old Town in the same district, 38.4% white and 41.2% Hispanic. I agree with other Villa Verde residents that Pudding Stone and Villa Verde have common interests, such as park and trail parking and traffic impacting nearby residential neighborhoods, and be kept together in one district. Map 105 does that. Map 127 also does that, but was drawn specifically to include an extra high Hispanic voter tract in District 1 across town, which is also a no-no. 41.1% white and 40.8% Hispanic. Villa Verde is so much more than Vaughn's. Sorrento Casa Retirement Home plays a vital role in the life of our Villa Verde community, providing area residents skilled nursing care and a place nearby to move their elderly relatives that need assisted living, so they can be close to them and should be kept with Villa Verde. The Manchester portion of Walnut Creek, included with Villa Verde in maps 101 and 131, is part of a larger community of interest that needs to be kept together. This piece is barely or not contiguous to Villa Verde and is separated by water and Covina. It is only accessible by driving through a separate district in Covina. Benelli and Pudding Stone are contiguous to Villa Verde because they are connected directly by a bridge and main roads. Walnut Creek is not connected to Benelli or Pudding Stone the same way. Access is via Valley Center. So Benelli and Pudding Stone should be preferred for inclusion with Villa Verde over Walnut Creek to meet state criteria. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Ms. Lamb.
Speaker number 2 is Frederick Sykes, speaking on districts.
For those who came in a few minutes late, I just wanted to make it clear that I've decided that we're going to have oral communications, and I'm going to give from 3 to, we're going to change it to 5 minutes for this evening's, because this is your opportunity to speak to the council concerning pros and cons of the maps. Okay, so you have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, city staff, and members of the audience. I'm Frederick Sykes, and I'm a visitor here to your city. And what concerns me is that it's very difficult to have fairness in this when the city council are the ones to select the map. It would have been better to have thought out perhaps a impartial way of having the districts drawn and selected. And unfortunately, we have a situation where we're forced to draw these districts, but we oftentimes overlook the reason why the districts are being brought to a particular community. And when you don't make a concerted effort to get those folks that are disenfranchised involved in helping to design the districts, I'm afraid that we end up pretty much with those folks being left out. And I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I would strongly urge you to step back and figure out how to do this with less impartiality, because these folks have a long list of years of trying to get it elected, and they haven't been able to get in particular the minorities. And so if you draw the districts with those folks participating and in mind, when that district is drawn, it'll be guaranteed that you will have somebody that's of a minority background that's never been here before. And so I would suggest that you just look for a more impartial way, because when the council members draw the districts, you can't help but to just think of your personal protection, and that's just natural. So we're not faulting you for it. We're just asking you to consider a more fair way to let these districts be established. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is David Estrada on voting districts.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, so I'm here today to raise the issue of our previous map 105 that was rejected by the council, and I'm asking you to reconsider, or at least consider it once again for a couple of points. I wasn't able to address this last time because we were just made aware of the proposals by the council. I've had some time now to review those. A couple of critical points I'd like to make with respect to the maps that the council is looking at now. Our proposal 105 clearly took into account the entire center of the city, the civic center from Laverne all the way to the 57 freeway. The maps that the council is looking at now cuts up the civic center and cuts it up between three different proposed districts. It takes out Merchant Park and the community in that area. It takes out the city hall, the sheriff's office, the fire department, and puts it into a different district. And most critically, especially to those of us who are Latino, and we consider the church to be a primary site where we gather and come to worship, and that's also been removed from the district that we are proposing. And instead now the district, instead of stopping at the 57, it crosses the 57 into a completely different area of the city. So we would ask that you reconsider that. The last point that I'd like for you to consider is this, and although I don't think anybody's really discussed it yet, but in scheduling the votes, the time for elections for next year, we would urge you to include whatever district you cite as heavily Latino to be up for election next year, instead of making us wait another 3 years to get a seat at the table. We would appreciate you considering that, and I think that would be very important. I'm not sure if that particular comment is appropriate at this time, but okay, great. So thank you all so much for your attention.
Thank you, sir.
Amanda Lee?
I'm sorry, who?
Amanda Lee?
Sorry, I have a bit of a delay because I'm watching online so I can clearly hear everything and be able to participate a little bit better. So again, my name's Amanda. I am a resident of the city going on 12 years now. I've been somewhat involved even prior to recently, where I've been more involved in attending council meetings a little bit more often. I had opted not to come to previous meetings to comment in regards to this for a couple reasons. Top reason being the way that this was set up. I felt that no matter what I said, it would be disregarded, because as a resident, I'm going to be honest, I feel the way this was set up was that the council already has a map in mind. And no matter what map we present to you, and no matter what arguments we make for the maps that we present, or even if we don't present a map, I didn't make a map, to be honest. I did look at the maps, and I was, kind of going through and being critical with them and looking at how the numbers were done. But there was just such a time crunch to create a map, and I just felt there were some really good maps up there, and I couldn't really do too much better than those. So I opted not to make one myself. But listening to the past meetings, I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed, because I don't know if you guys are discussing this behind closed doors without the actual public council meeting. That's not an accusation. I'm just saying it's natural to have these kind of conversations of debating over this, whether it's between yourselves or with your loved ones at home, and just to look at it. I hope you guys are having conversations about it, because this is very important. So we should be digesting this information and really going over it. I know, Mr. Vienna, you said that you had laid it out all on your living room floor and gone over it. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. Emner, I know you said you are also going over it. I'm sure everybody has been. What I hope to see tonight is a little bit more discussion, less of voter numbers. I know this is important, and I know separating, being able to give an equal chance to the communities throughout the city, in particular in reference to the lawsuit that's going through right now, which is why you're going through this exercise. The Latino community, who has been trying to get elected and just hasn't quite been able to get over that hump. What I hope to see, though, with districting is a little bit further than that. As a resident, what I hope to see with districts is not just, oh, Latinos, should be elected and should have an equal chance. I agree with that, 100%. But I want to see districts also represent their communities of the district. So when we start seeing maps like what were chosen that are representing quite diverse communities, it raises a lot of questions. And to be honest, I feel like when I'm watching other cities that are redistricting right now, part of what they're being called out for, and part of why they're having to redistrict, is not just the growth with the census, but also because they were finding the communities were too diverse, so the one district just wasn't, it was favoring one side over the other. So for example, when you have Villa Verde community, and then you have this, the Charter Oaks community, which has a lot of those senior mobile homes, who do you think is going to get a majority of the attention? Because I can tell you right now, the seniors in those mobile homes have already come up here and have complained that, they're being forgotten. The city supposedly is helping manage those, and somehow it's not getting done. So what I hope to see with the district, not just the voters, I would love to see our council being able to represent these very unique portions of our city, our very unique community. We've heard it time and time again. Villa Verde doesn't have the same concerns that, say, Old Town has. We do have different concerns. For example, Old Town has the gold mine coming in, and even that is going to divide Old Town, because I'm on 2nd Street, as many of you know. I'm closer, I guess, to where John lived. I'm not going to be affected by the traffic going in for the train, as, say, Mr. Viana might have, because he's very close to that station. I'm not going to have that same concern, unfortunately, so it's not going to impact me the same. So I hope that goes into consideration. I would love to hear more discussion about that, because I feel we didn't really get into that in the last meeting. That's really all I have to add. I know you guys have a really hard job to do with this. So again, thank you for taking the time and giving the community a time to voice their concern. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jeanette Ellis.
Is it okay if I take this off now? May I take? Thank you so much. Is it okay?
Yeah, you're fine.
Thank you, appreciate it. Good evening, Mayor and Cabinet members. My name is Jeanette Ellis Royston. I'm a resident of the city of Pomona. I'm standing before you on behalf of the NAACP, the Pomona Valley Branch. The Pomona Valley Branch serves 10 cities. San Dimas is one of our 10 cities. We have members who actually live in San Dimas. We do lots of community involvement here in the city of Pomona, in the city of San Dimas. So I'm standing before you on behalf, as I said, of the NAACP and the work that we do. I don't have all the data. I don't have all of the information, but I was contacted by several of the members letting me know that San Dimas is in the process of redistricting. My understanding is that they provided a map, and they're concerned that this map was not considered. As I said, I don't have all the data, but I do know that San Dimas, the history of San Dimas, and if you look around now, is mostly white people. And I'm just going to be upfront with you. However, the history here in San Dimas and your demographic has changed, which is fantastic. You have a growing city that has a large population of Hispanic and African American, Asian American. So the model that many of the cities are taking today is redistricting. So I'm hoping that you would consider the map that this particular group have put forward. We already know that disproportionate is big time across the board for African American and Latinos. We're asking you please to consider the map that was put forward. We really want to be able to work with San Dimas. We work with all of the other cities, and I'm going to name the 10 cities just so you'll be aware of them. We serve 10 cities, 5 in San Bernardino County and 5 in LA County. The 5 in San Bernardino County, it's Ontario, Montclair, Upland, Chino, and Chino Hills. The 5 cities in Los Angeles County is Diamond Bar, Claremont, Laverne, San Dimas, and Pomona. And we are very proud of the cities that we serve. And we do lots of work, lots of community involvement. So we want you to know that voter suppression, we want that to out. And right now, this is exactly what's happening. It's disproportionate in various districts here in the city of San Dimas. We want you to change that. We want you to change it. It's injustice because it's been going on for a long time, since the history of San Dimas. The city of San Dimas have become extremely diverse. I've already mentioned. I'm going to close with Martin Luther King, one of his quotes, one of my favorite. The time is always right to do what is right. The time is always right to do what is right. As I leave, please read my back. We are stronger together.
The next speaker is Jose Calderon.
Mayor and members of the San Dimas City Council, first of all, I just want to say how glad we are that you decided before this meeting to hold a public hearing on the final focus maps and not just allow for comments in the oral communications. If you remember, you left the meeting and you said you wouldn't decide till today whether it would be oral communications or a public hearing. So we're glad that it's a public hearing. We were concerned because still on the city website is the document Notice of Public Hearings. And if you're not going to follow it, I would urge you to take it down. That still includes the dates of November 15th, 16th, 17th, and the 23rd for public input on this matter. Secondly, we're also glad about another issue that we were going to raise tonight, and that is that there will be a public hearing on the proposed ordinance that we barely saw online, and that hearing is going to take on November 23rd. We're glad about that because we thought here they're going to put forward an ordinance and no public input. Hence, we understand that tonight is the first reading of Ordinance 1292 and that the public will be able to have input on November 23rd. We're also glad that the City Council is now clearly moving from at-large districts, which will certainly open the doors to the possibilities for the participation and to balance with the reality of the demographic changes in San Dimas, which is now 41% white, but in terms of people of color is now the majority, 37% Latino, 15% Asian American, and 4% Black. At the same time, we are dismayed, and I can't say anything else except shame on you, that the work of the Latino and Latina Roundtable, the Labor Council for Latin American Advancement, and the NAACP in putting forth the map 105, or 71564, was put aside by the council in the last meeting with no explanation. And that configuration clearly showed that District 2 includes 35.3% white, 44% Hispanic, 11% Asian, 6% Black, 1% Native American, and 2% Native Hawaiian Islander, that district would in fact be representative of what San Dimas has become. For these reasons, we still stand with Map 105 as serving the requisites of what is most important in the requisites of a community of interest, and I know some other people are going to speak to that, what will result in the most participation and what will open the doors for the possibilities of a more diverse city council. We do not understand how you took the time to make changes to Map 101, but did not take the same time to review and make possible changes to Map 105 that we presented with the technical assistance of the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund, who, by the way, is included on your website alongside NAACP and the Asian Justice Center as examples of, quote, resources for guides to district and redistricting. After the presentation of your final maps in the last meeting, we continued to meet with MALDEF representatives who stood by their position that the best community of interest map for this city was the one that they used their expertise to help develop, Map 105. It should also be pointed out that throughout this process, there have been no other groups that have come before this body and put so much time and so much effort and so much commitment in city council meetings and in public hearings than our groups who presented this proposal. And they're all residents of San Dimas with years of living here, in my case, 26 years. We not only developed a map with this technical assistance of MALDEF, but we also added our statement as to why we considered it a community of interest. And it was an insult not to have our Map 105 considered in the end, and we urge you now to take Map 105 into consideration, make changes if you need to, like you did with 101, and reconsider the arguments as to why we continue to strongly support Map 105 that includes District 2 as an example of a district that reflects the demographic changes in the area. A District 2, where we not only need to look at the voting age population by race, which Ryan Vienna proposes, but the overall population by race, because clearly our communities of color include large numbers of young people who in the coming months and years will continue to increase in numbers and need to be included in any future projections for how districts should be drawn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rose Calderon.
Good evening. I'm Rose Calderon. I wanted to just say a few things. We have had women and people of color run for city council positions before, but because of the at-large election format in San Dimas, we have never had a person of color win, and only one woman has ever held the office. There are Latino residents in our city whose generations date back to their work as farm workers in the citrus industry, many of them women. In speaking with some of them, they do not want to move out because of this history and do see the need for a diverse representation that could advance the changing demographics of the city and its diverse history. I have lived here for 26 years, and I do not want to move out. And that is why I have been at every recent city council meeting and public hearing to create the opportunity for more diverse participation and the possibilities of electing more women and people of color to the council. I ask the council to once again look at what is in the best interest of all people of this community and not get swayed by those like a few in Villa Verde who commented in their map statement that what makes them different than the rest of the community is at the forefront, the difference than the rest of the city is their wealth. I also hope that all of you put the interests of our community at the forefront in deciding on a final map, taking into consideration the demographic changes, and not base the final map decision on where you live, your incumbency, and what best fits your reelection. It is with all this in mind that our Latino Roundtable, LACLA, and NAACP representatives, who are all residents of San Dimas, strongly urge you to once again look at the plan number 105 in order to move our city towards the diversity that is now made up of and lead our city in the interest of all members of our community. Last, we also call on changing the commission appointment process, such as the Planning Commission, that we understand is often used to groom future members or candidates for the City Council and ensure that this process too puts diversity in the forefront. Thank you.
Thank you.
James Shirley.
Mayor, City Council, staff, citizens of San Dimas, as well as guests, my name is James Shirley, and I'm a resident of San Dimas, and I've lived in San Dimas for 21 years. I want to acknowledge that I'm glad that we're having a hearing today as opposed to just comments. And when we entered this process, when you were asking for our input, we felt really good in terms of providing our input regarding carving out a district that would be representative of the diversity of the city. Having done that, and as we were going through the process, if my memory serves me correctly, we had 3 that were in favor of District 105. However, as we moved towards the end of the process, 105 was phased out. That was somewhat disheartening, okay? What we wanted to try and do is that as a result of the demographics changing, and the demographics is changing not only in San Dimas but throughout the nation, is that we just want to make sure that there's adequate representation that participates on the city council as well as the mayor within our city, because it's always good if you live in a city and you want to be involved in the city and you want to be a part of how the city is managed and run, when you can see people that look like yourself that sit up on the city council. I'm sure if it was the other way around, if it was just all blacks, you would have people who would be white or people that would be of another nationality saying that that's not right when we live in a very diverse world. And as I stated before, San Dimas is in a position where it can be a model city where other cities can emulate what it is San Dimas is doing, because when we look at the demographics and when we looked at all the maps in terms of the demographics have changed in all the districts. But as a result of going from voting at large to voting by district, now whoever the council person is would have to live in that district. And we have to somehow figure out a way in which we can all work and live and support each other, because we're all intertwined. You know, we all need each other. And we can do that. We can work together. We can make sure that we have diversity. And I think if you was to talk to anyone of any race, they would tell you that having diverse representation at all levels is the way to go, because there's creative energies and we're more productive when we're able to utilize the intellectual capital of all diverse groups of people as opposed to just one. And, you know, we sincerely hope that after you hear the comments that are being made by the various people within the community as well as people outside of the community, as well as discussion among yourselves, that we're going to do the right thing. I'm confident that we're in a position where we can do the right thing. And I think we all would agree, change never comes easy, but change is always evolving. And some we can grasp the change, some it may take a little more time, but be it as it may, we're gonna all have to change because we live in a ever-changing world. And we want what's best for the city. We love this city. I love this city. You know, the citizens of this community loves the city. You as council member and staff and residents love this city. And we want to do what's going to be in the best interest of the city, in the best interest of the people. And when we just look at the wall to my left here, you know, and I think San Dimas was established 1887. That's 134 years, but I think it was incorporated in 1960. That's 61 years. And yet, there's no person of color that's on that wall, and on that wall there's only one female. I think anybody would say something's wrong with those pictures. And we're in a position where we can change that. And I think we would all feel better when we can look at that wall and see it represents the diverse and the demographic changes within our great city. Thank you.
James Sembrano.
James Zambrano, attorney at law. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I'm here to speak about the maps and my experience. According to the staff report, you wanted to hear some people's experiences with City of San Dimas. I've been around for a long time. I grew up in Pomona. I now live in Laverne. Went to Laverne University and the law school there. So I've been around this area for a long time. I've been to San Dimas several times on business for the Planning Commission, and all I've seen is white. I know that issue has come up before, and the reason that has happened is because of the city at-large voting system. And in the Planning Commission, it has also been white. I've never seen a black person or Latino on the Planning Commission, which is the most powerful, commission in the city, which develops all the wealth comes from the Planning Commission. The development of the wealth comes from the land use. One thing I wanted to say about the maps is I've noticed that 101 and 101.5 were generated from the city. 101.5 is just a slight variation. We do not know who created the 127 and 131 maps. So that creates a suspicion that there may be some hanky-panky going on. We know that the city did not voluntarily enter into this redistricting plan as a result of threatened lawsuit and a settlement agreement. And we heard it over and over, people, your council members and staff saying that we do not want to do this. That creates a presumption that there is something amiss with the creation of these maps. And I think the elimination or the rejection of map 105 is evidence of that. This plan you're going to vote for is not ultimately going to be sanctioned by the city council because it can be reviewed by the court. So if there's something wrong, we could bring that up. Even though there's a settlement agreement to start the process, the way you do it may not be without a suspicion or otherwise. So anyway, I would use that to urge you to consider 105 map to be considered in the process. Thank you.
Alicia Rodriguez.
Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to listen this evening. My name is Alicia Rodriguez, and I am a retired educator from Bonita Unified School District. I came to this city for the same reason that all of you came to this city. I came to this city looking for a place to raise my children where safety was ensured and basically, you know, a calm, beautiful community. And I've stayed for the last 21 years. Now, I'm with the Latino Roundtable, and I'm also a member of the Latin American Association. Now, what I want to share with you is my experience coming into this city 21 years ago. I went into the school district, reviewed the curriculum, and thought, yes, for sure, this is in the curriculum. I can teach about diversity. I can teach about slavery. I can teach about Day of the Dead. I can teach about Kwanzaa. Okay? No, I was reprimanded time and time again. Okay? That is the result of having a government in city council, and I know I'm talking about a different government, school board. But the bottom line is, when we have representation in the city council, it will spill into a school board, okay? Now, there is a benefit in teaching about diversity. When we teach about diversity to our community members as city council members, when we teach about diversity to our students, there is bonding. there is growth. There is a tighter community. And for 17 years, I retired 4 years ago, for 17 years, I tiptoed around teaching diversity. Yes, I accomplished it to an extent, but I was held to a higher standard than my colleagues because of my brown face. Okay? It shouldn't be that way. It should be that we're comfortable with each other's ethnicity. We should be able to grow with each other's ethnicity. And it's not going to happen if we're unable to elect somebody that looks like the minorities. As I totaled up the minorities in the proposed 105 map, 65%, that's a 65% of the population. 44% Latino, another percentage, Asian, African American, 65%. And it brought to my mind a time when I was in downtown LA with a group of 40 students from my Spanish class. Yes, because did I mention I taught from first grade all the way to 12th grade in this district. I was in downtown LA, across the street from Olvera Street, and there was a sign there that said, by 2040, the minorities will be a majority in this country. And that's what we need to prepare for. A time when we will struggle with issues, but yes, support each other as we grow as a community. And I urge you to please take another look to map 105, because it will get us there. It will get us prepared for 2030, 2040, when we are, as a minority, the minorities will become a majority. And it shouldn't be you versus us. It's us together, taking control of governing a beautiful city, a city that we all appreciate. Because when you look at those posts on San Dimas bus, people are reaching out to each other, helping each other. There is that sense of community, and we need to continue to have that. But it's not going to have it if we don't have the representation up here of minorities. So thank you for your time, and please reconsider our map 105. Thank you.
Council, those are all of the speaker cards that have been turned in.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to the council?
Good evening. My name's Karen Bridgewater. And the first thing I wanted to say is I've also heard people in the community say that, the council had already chosen their map, the one that they wanted from the beginning. And so it's interesting to see that map 101 is one of the maps that you all chose. I need to say that I'm very glad to see that you made the decision to have a public meeting tonight. That was encouraging, and I hope that you really will take into consideration what people have presented here, because I think it's really important. I sent all of you an email today, and I don't know if you all had a chance to read it, but I'm going to go ahead and read it myself. Here. I feel the need to comment on the state of the districting map process. 1, none of the district maps upon which you are focusing provide a great percentage point advantage to Latino voters over white voters in our city. It's my understanding that that was the goal of the lawsuit. The 4 maps you chose failed to accomplish that goal. Although each of your focus maps may have a higher percentage of Latinos' total population in one district, that does not translate to a higher percentage of Latino voters. In fact, the largest percentage point advantage for the Latino voters over white voters is seen in map 131, which is a paltry 1%. Maps 101 and 101.5 have an even smaller advantage of 0.7% each. Map 127 actually gives a percentage point advantage to white voters over the Latino voters of 0.3%. It was also my understanding that another goal of drawing district maps was to create districts that represented cohesive neighborhoods. I find it difficult to see how District 2, especially in maps 127 and 101.5, which both carve this very narrow slice of the city that extends approximately 4.5 miles from the east to west borders, how that accomplishes the goals. When most people refer to their neighborhood, they talk about those who abide in their general vicinity, not 4.5 miles away through a narrow corridor. On a similar note, maps 101 and 131 both split Via Verde and set up a District 2 that includes part of the city from just below Arrow Highway up to East Juanita Avenue. This seems like a neighborhood whose residents would consider themselves separate from Via Verde and would have some unique concerns that Via Verde residents would not necessarily share. There were many other maps submitted, including the ones that have been talked about tonight, that did a much better job of keeping neighborhoods intact and setting up one district that gave a clear advantage to the Latino voters in our city. Some of those maps would better allow residents to elect someone who not only represents their concerns, but also those of their neighbors. I think you can do a more equitable job of creating districts that are more reflective of residential neighborhoods and that satisfy the goal of providing our Latino residents with the representation they deserve. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the council?
Good evening, City Council. I actually just had two questions that I wanted to pose to the council, if maybe you can perhaps comment on after I state my questions. So the first question I had is that recognizing that time was a bit of a constraining factor, were there any other proposals that you considered for selecting or receiving a recommendation for a map? And then the second question I have is if you had additional time for citizen input, what other options may you have considered or would you have wanted to consider as part of the selection process? These are questions that I've heard from various residents, and I thought I would pose it directly to the City Council for your comment or your thoughts. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. All right.
Hi, my name's Jose Luis Calderon. I live in San Dimas. When I moved here to San Dimas to pick a high school, I went to high school. I had many different choices, but I went to high school in this area as opposed to Alhambra high school area where I came from. And I was really excited to get to meet new people, but very nervous. One of the first things I did was go into my high school counselor, and he gave me two options because it came in late for electives. One was I could be in the drama department club, or I can go to be, I guess, like musical theater, things like that. Or I can go work with disabled kids, which didn't have a lot of people because it was a hard job, mostly tutoring, things like that. Wasn't, I guess, as fun as the other electives. So I chose to go and I was like, you know what, I'm going to try, because I lived closer to, Hollywood before. I'm going to try the acting. Let's go do that. Walked in, this is my first day of high school again in this area, and I walked into the auditorium. Teacher looked at me and said, I think you made a mistake. You don't look like you belong in this class. And I said, no, I'm pretty sure it's right here on my schedule. The counselor put me in. He's like, no, you don't look like you. I remember noticing most of the students were white. And I said, no, it's right here. He's like, no, you should go. And he's like, I'll walk you back to your counselor. So he walked me back to the office. Counselor didn't question. He says, I guess it looks like this isn't going to work out. You're going to go into the tutoring for the disabled kids. And that's what I did. Didn't think anything of it. Kind of was weirded out. Then in my Spanish class, I'm a son of a professor, and my best friend was a daughter of a professor at the Claremont colleges. Both in our Spanish books, we realized that almost every single page, it said spic, wetback, bad things about Mexican women, written in the comment books. And it was not just mine, it was my friends and other books as well. Eventually, I transferred out of this area. I commuted back to Marquette High School in the Alhambra Monterey Park area. And I always thought, like, as the years gone by, I went to the Claremont colleges, I got my master's at University of Laverne in leadership and management. Most of that was about how do we manage cities, how do we manage corporations, businesses, and the key is always inclusivity, diversity, representing the people, our employees, and representing our clients. This always leads to better profits, a better organization, employee engagement, community engagement, better civically involved. So the things from my high school and the things from Better Business, we know that, like, having diversity in leadership and having diversity in the workplace leads to always better profits, better outcomes, better organizations. And well, why do we have students that were saying, I don't belong in a drama club, or, Spanish is for people who are wetbacks or who don't belong here? Well, look at who our city is. Our representatives, they don't see positive members who are people of color. They're seeing white people. And so when they take that back and the people who live here, they teach that to their kids. It happens, it plays out in high schools. And so they grow up to believe that I will never be a city council member. I will never get a master's degree. I'll never go to a school like the Claremont colleges, and I'll never be able to be a leader, and I won't represent diversity. And that's what I experienced as a kid in this area, and I see it happening still to this day. When we have places like Villa Verde who want to be their own region because of their wealth and their own interests, well, those people I know go to the gym or work at the gym on this side of town. They go to the Target, they go to the Costco. What if we created rules, if we vote on our district, that those people can't go to Costco between the hours of, 10 to 11 or 7 at night. They can only go for 1 hour in the morning, or they can't use this Target, or they can't go to this gym. That's kind of what they're saying in their area, that their interests matter only to themselves because of their own wealth. Well, that's not true. We're a whole city, and we all deserve to be a part of this diverse learning environment to, have a better city. And so I do agree with MAP 105. I think that we need to have boundaries that allow people of color to be in leadership positions, that we all work together, that we don't separate by class, by money, by values of religious beliefs, things like that. And I think it's important for me growing up here and me as an adult to see people of color, because it teaches me that, hey, you know what, this community is changing. Minorities are now a majority, and they need to be represented in all aspects, in the police force, in our Board of Education, and as well as in our City Council. And I think that will trickle down to our youth growing up to be better people. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? At this point in time, I'm going to take a recess. I'd like to see the city attorney and the city manager, please. We'll get started again if you guys would like to come on in. We'll reconvene the special city council meeting. Okay. All right, we're gonna get started while they do their photo thing out there. Okay. Okay, I'll turn this over to the city manager.
There has been a question regarding the mechanics of a public hearing item, so I'll turn it to the city attorney to explain the mechanics of a public hearing item that comes before the council.
Okay, folks, if you would, please come on in, and the city attorney is going to talk about the mechanics of this public hearing. Comment?
I'm not exactly sure what the question is, but a public hearing is when we have an item that the council needs to consider, and we legally have to open a hearing for the public to provide their testimony. We did that at the last meeting. We opened the public hearing, we took testimony, and we closed the public hearing. Then the council started deliberating, and the council continued the item to tonight. So tonight we had an oral communications period, the public gave some more testimony, and then we're going to move into the public hearing item where the council will continue its deliberations on the maps. You can then select a map tonight to attach to the ordinance that we have attached to the staff report, and you can introduce that ordinance tonight, along with choosing the election sequence for the years 2022 and 2024. So that's the process for the item tonight.
All right, so the public hearing's been opened and was closed the last council meeting. Is that the way I understand it?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. All right. Why don't we start communications from the council?
Was there any staff report on this other than same as last time?
No, I can go through some of the background if you like, but that's at your pleasure.
So in essence, it's just continued council deliberation from the last meeting, and we're picking up where we left off with, so my first question, Mr. Mayor and Mr. City Attorney and Mr. City Manager, is we've got these 4 maps. Are we able to look at other maps still and make some changes? And what are the deadlines for doing that, and how would that work?
So yes, all 38 maps you can still consider tonight if you would like, and you can make revisions to those maps. If you wanted to have revisions to one of the maps tonight, As long as it's something that we could put up on the screen tonight, then you can select that map to attach to the ordinance and introduce the ordinance still tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. John, do you have any more comments?
Lots of comments, but I mean, I'll start off with a couple of comments. And
This is the time that we're going to ask questions and put our information out.
but I'm hoping we're going to have a discussion too. We're not just going to go down the line and vote on a map. So, so I'll say a couple things. You know, all the speakers made good points, and some of the good points that were made this time and last time is that districts should be compact and identifiable with neighborhoods and that kind of thing. And the compactness is an interesting one. I just happened to look out on the District R site at other cities all over the place, and apparently, or at the maps that were like adopted in other cities that are in effect. And it's not unheard of. In fact, it's quite common for the districts to step up here and there, you know, kind of wander over there. I mean, if you look at the LA city map, for example, for their city council districts, not sure how they ended up drawing all the lines, but the thing is that we've got some nice, in some of the maps, some nice almost square-looking districts, but they don't have to be that way. And I say it because last meeting, one of my comments about map 105 is that it stepped up and it went this way and it went that way, and I take that back because it doesn't have to be a nice straight line, and so that's one comment I'd like to make. I'm not saying that I'm advocating for 105 right at this moment, but I'm just saying that that's not a reason to discount it.
Dennis? Eric?
I did more thinking on a few of these maps since the last meeting. 101, obviously not created by the city, but created by the demographer who has done this many, many times in the past for many different cities and is well versed in the legal defensibility of the maps that they make. Not saying that we have to stick exactly with that, but I think there's a huge benefit to 101 in that sense, that somebody who's very familiar with the process and the legal defensibility of it, especially when there was comments alluding to litigation stemming from the districting process, I think that's important. 101.5, I think the numbers, as far as the population balance, were there. The voting age population, which the demographer has pointed out, is the number which would make us legally defensible in court, if I understand that correctly. That's there as well. I think it's a pretty high percentage. If we're talking, I'll look that up. Voting age, Hispanic voting age population was 41.3, and 44.3 for just the Hispanic population in District 3 there. However, I do kind of think that skinny District 2, the more I thought about that, the more it didn't quite make sense. We have, as we compare 101 with 101.5, the rest of the city is not broken up into thin strips from east to west. And while District 1, in that regard, kind of holistically takes Villa Verde and the Pudding Stone area together. I really, even being a Villa Verde resident, I don't think that that Villa Verde and Pudding Stone necessarily need to be together. They have their own unique features and challenges in both east and west sides of that District 1 and 101.5. And so does District 2, it being a little thin strip going east to west, it almost seems kind of like an afterthought. And looking at 127, it's kind of got that same thing in District 2, that long strip east to west. And I think we've heard some comments tonight about that type of district. But that leaves, to me, 131, which seems like a viable option to me. The numbers, as far as the Hispanic voting age population and the Hispanic population in general, seem to be in a place that they make sense. As far as the population in District 3 in map 131, we have a 7.4% disparity of white to Hispanic in just regular population, and still a full 1% voting age population advantage Hispanic to white. So I think the numbers make sense in that regard. Additionally, in District 3, the Hispanic voting age population is the highest of any of the maps that we've seen at 41.4. I think it includes enough of 101 that it's, I think, probably going to come with a legal defensibility because the framework is there. It's very similar to 101 in some regards, but it just balances out the population a little more evenly, balances out the, not balances out, but gives a little more of an edge in normal Hispanic population and voting population to District 3, which I think is important. So those are my comments on the maps and all the thinking that I've been doing about this. I agree that I don't think that I'm particularly sold on the idea that Villa Verde has any sort of income advantage over the rest of the city. I think even the statistics prove that that's not true. So I don't know that we need to be one large voting district in the south end encompassing Puddingstone and Villa Verde.
Hey, Ryan? We're going to have a discussion, but your comments.
Sure. So I looked at 105 just over the course of the weekend, anticipating there'd probably be interest in that for the purposes of this discussion this evening. And then also looked over these maps. I think that when we look at the maps, understanding the goal, and the goal, I think Mr. Shirley put it the best, is the best for the entire community. And that means everybody, every group, every stakeholder here, every community of interest, to make sure that we get to that place and that space where people feel represented. I think that listening to people from the community just over the time that these maps have been out, and all the way up until earlier today, people have different perspectives of what they identify with in their community and what their interests are. Some folks that live near Walnut Creek, identify with some residents in Villa Verde as being the people that have championed issues in the past to be able to preserve that space. And so for those reasons, there's a host of people that feel that they are best represented by the folks that are in the Villa Verde area. You have other folks that in Villa Verde that think that Puddingstone is almost mutually exclusive to them, and the arguments of finances and I guess affluent area. But you have others that live in that area in Puddingstone who don't agree with that and think that their issues are different from those in Villa Verde. To include raging waters, to include some of the hillsides and what have you in their nestled area. So I have to say, I actually, hearing a lot of the speakers tonight, I do agree with a lot of the comments that were made tonight as it relates to ensuring that we have diversity and that we achieve those interests in whatever it is that we decide. But I do offer that, as I looked at these maps, I think it's a disservice to the city to draw maps that don't do a good job of diversifying the constituency or the representative base. And what I mean by that is, for example, in maps, whether 101 or 131, you see commonalities and features that at least 3 members of the city council presumptively would share in common, if nothing else, by their constituency. And those issues are open space. Those issues are county parks, San Dimas Canyon Park being one of them, the Mike Antonovich Trail being another, and Puddingstone being another. That all 3 of those things are things that potentially a constituency would hold an elected person accountable for. I wonder how much equity there is in representation when it comes to single-family homes and how those constituencies hold that elected representative accountable for those things. And so as Councilman Weber pointed out, with maps 127 or 101.5, that second district runs east-west, and you end up in a place in a space where there is very little commonality as it relates to some of the features that generally have been held by members of this community for a long time as the quaintness and the charm that makes this place a bedroom community that has really, worked to slow development in the single-family home areas, and has worked to protect the open space, the trees, and all the other things that we know are there. The other thing is, as it relates to the specifics on demographics, as I look at 101.5, 101, even 105 against 131. As I stated at the previous meeting, I was partial to 131 or 101. I continue to remain there. What the discussions from the public had further brought, at least to my attention, is that specifically in 131, and as I've heard from several members in the community, was the max population deviation on that specific map was among the lowest at 1.34%. The other piece of that is it does achieve the representative numbers for the Hispanic population. But what it also does is among these maps, even against 105, is it achieves some of the highest levels of Asian representation in those districts. Specifically in the area of Villa Verde, where in that instance on 131, 23.1% Asian representation in that district. So I say all that to say that when we look at this throughout the entire community, I think that there's something to be said for making sure that things make sense, that we do a good job in looking at this and represent all of the people in our community. And I think that the districts as represented in 131 to me have enough pieces of the puzzle between park space, between single-family homes. I think there's some uniqueness in districts 3 and 4 that have stakeholders in both the downtown area, the preservation of those homes in that area, the equestrian community that's also been historically in that area in 3-4. And I think 1 and 2 also bleed over with some of those features where you do have equestrian trails and the Antonovich Trail in Benelli Park. So I just think that, I think Amanda Lee said it, representative of diversity and unique features in the community. And I just think that this map to me, does the best job of achieving not just the justice that I think some groups here in the community wish to see, and goes beyond that, I think, by looking at the Asian population as well. But I also think that it does a good job in representing all of this diversity in terms of community that we have here. Thanks.
I'm not going to rehash everything that was said up here because I agree with probably virtually everything. But what I wanted to point out is that several speakers spoke to the maps. It's that this council, or each one of us individually, had really just narrowed down on 3 or 4 or 5 maps. Each one of us, I would believe, at least I know me, have looked at every one of these maps very extensively. There are 38 maps. We had several hearings on it. We eventually barreled it down to 4 maps, and there was discussion. It was not, and it's been very, very liberal, very upbeat to figure out what we're doing and where we're going. At this point, I would like the demographer, and I can't pronounce it, to pull up 105 for me once again, please.
Sure. Would you like to see the data evaluation? What tab would you like to see?
Yeah, if you don't mind, please.
Sure. Show the district numbering.
Is it possible to bring the map itself up to a larger version?
Sure. Is there a particular area that you'd like me to zoom in on?
No, I just wanted to see that, the area out there. And then the numbers. All right, thank you. So, from what I could see, and I appreciate all the work that's gone hard into every one of these maps, each and every one, I realize that 105 was a collaboration of several different organizations, but nonetheless, we had 38 maps that were submitted by someone. I do not know who, other than the people who have told us that they submitted them. So I have no idea. If somebody could bring up, I'm still confused on 131. There is a small area right in the center of the map. And what was the significance of that? Has anybody asked anybody who happened to volunteer that information or what that was?
I think at the last meeting, when we clicked through it, it changed the representation, if I recall correctly. If you change the
Is that true, Jeff?
Yes, I believe it. We can change that overall, and I'll show you what changes. So, let me just pull up the population tab so you can first see what changes in terms of the population. So it is.
That was strange.
Yeah, so it increases the population by, I believe it was approximately 100 people. And then I don't believe it made any changes to the voting age population.
It dropped at 0.1 tenth
Yeah,
of a percent.
it was by 0.1%.
And it increased the population deviation.
All right, how much?
It's still within the bound. You're certainly within the population deviation. Yeah, there's no issues with population deviation on that.
All right. Okay, I too have looked at all of the maps. I've looked at 38 maps. I did not look at 5. I've looked at all the maps, and the significant things that I look at is the boundaries, the interests, the common interests of that particular area. I have questions about the entire process, is because what, in my mind, is that, say if I wasn't on the council, I now am going off to re-elect one person plus a mayor, so that means I got 20% of the representation. And if I was to look at certain areas, as I believe Ryan said, the parks, the reality is I'm going to need other council people to agree with me to be able to get the significant things that we need to do. Otherwise, we're all going to be fighting each other. So you got to work with each other to figure out what's the best way to govern. And so as I'm looking at this, and I'm not at all discounting the work that was done with 105, but I just believe that I was really hard pressed, as I told you last 2 weeks ago, or last week rather, that I thought the company we hired did an outstanding job of breaking it down the way that at least the city attorney, city manager, and the council asked them to look at. And as the professionals, they came back with 101. I don't know where 131 comes from, and I do recognize that there's a lot of similarities. I can't, other than the fact that what we just talked about there. So I'm willing to have a discussion, but
yeah, I'd like to.
And we'll go from there. But so, John, you want to start?
I had some more comments. For one thing, you know, I think the downside of having districts is the assumption that people are going to care more about things in their own district than in the rest of the city. Anybody who knows the record of anybody up here, but I'll just speak for myself because I can remember it better. If you want to talk about everything from the north to the south, and I'm not going to go over a long history, but you know, you see the foothills now. The reason you see those foothills without houses on them is because in the 90s when I started out, I and then another council member and finally the entire council protected those hillsides. Dennis, of course, has been active in Benelli Park issues, and he remembers me speaking as a private citizen out there in support of what he was advocating to keep Benelli Park open space. And you've heard me talk about protecting neighborhoods, where it was in Via Verde or in the downtown or anywhere, and equestrians for that matter. So whatever the outcome of the districts, I intend to continue advocating and representing the entire city. That being said, so that's the statement. To go on from there, I wanted to talk a little bit about the population. One of the speakers mentioned it, I think, and I would agree that it is important for the voting age population in 2020 to see what those numbers are. But in 2021, 2022, and beyond, the better number to use, in my opinion, is the total population. And the reason is that people are going to be aging into voting. When you're looking at these percentages, just remind yourself that 0.1% is 9 people. 0.2% is 18 people. 0.3 is 27. So to say that a map with 44.2% Hispanic in this case is somehow underrepresenting when you can get the 42.4, you're talking about 18 people in 2020.
Did that make a difference in a Laverne election recently? I'm talking about numbers, though, because 5 votes makes a difference. I mean, we saw that recently in an election.
Yeah, those numbers are virtually identical, and in the future, what's going to happen is those districts with a greater population of any sort is going to have greater numbers of voters. So that's why I say that the population overall is important. Not only that, but you're talking about representation. So I understand there's a drive to elect people, certain people, and whatever, and that's part of the campaign. But you're talking about representing the people, and the people are the number of people that are in the district. It's not. It isn't just people who vote, for example. And voting age, of course, that's not saying how many people vote in the different categories. So I would just say that. I would also say that, and I only did this for the 4 maps that were final maps, but I think it's instructive to look not only at the district. Now I'm going to talk about Hispanic voting power, let's call it that, and the odds, let's call it that, odds of a Hispanic person being elected to the city council. What are the greater odds? So, as I said, you can, find a couple tenths of a percent here and there, but let's look at the top 2 districts, the top 2 in Hispanic representation or the Hispanic population. And let's look at these 4 maps that we have. And if you look at those 4 maps, the one that does I'm going to say a better job of the second highest district is map 127. In that map, the white and Hispanic population is within a percentage point. Within a percentage point. So, in effect, you have 2 districts, and I argue that better represents the demographics of San Dimas. Because if you look on there's some paper somewhere that says what the total percentages are, and I had it here a second ago. So according to 2020 census, 40.8% white, 37.1% Hispanic. Virtually the same. I mean, and by 2022 and 2024, I'll bet you it's going to be about the same. So if you're saying what's leading us toward the future of a better representation, then I would say that map 127, and again, I didn't look at the other 34 maps for these numbers. It is a lot of work to analyze them all, but that is the best. Whereas 131, there's almost a 4% white over Hispanic difference. So, and I'm not saying that's the only thing we should base it on, but I'm just saying the population, it doesn't boil down to, well, what's, 0.2 or 0.3% higher here or there. So that's my point on that. The other is the population discrepancy or deviation. I think we're hung up too much on getting that number as low as possible. You have to look at these districts and account for growth in the city. First of all, it's not bad to have, it's not against the law, and it's fine to have a little bit of deviation in it. So if there's a district that's going to grow a little bit more, it's okay to be on the low side of population now. I'm just saying that trying to get the deviation as of 2020 down to 0 or 1% is, I don't think is that significant a thing to worry about.
Yeah, but when he's finished, I'd like to say something.
Go ahead. I have another comment, but I'll go ahead, Dennis.
I have no problem with map 105. I just think it's not necessarily the best map that we have. But I would have no problem voting for it. 120, the main problem with 105 is that it doesn't take the downtown area together. It doesn't take the town core together, and that's my main problem with it, whereas 127 does. All these maps are diversified. There's not one that isn't any good at all. And what I think is amazing is that when you look at by race, 105 is 44.2%. Every map that we've looked at is either 44.2% or higher. So there isn't any map that we're looking at that has less by race than 105. They all have more. So that's why I have a hard time understanding why some people are wedded to 105. But 105 is a good map. I just think there are other maps that are better, and I think 127 is the best map of all.
The other point I wanted to make, and just goes along with what Dennis said, and that is about the town core. I'm going to end up representing that district, at least part of it, no matter what map it is, at least for maybe the next 2 years. We'll see what happens after that. But if you could bring up 131, because I think 131 is a good illustration of what I'm talking about. And then Jeff Simonetti, could you zoom in so that you have San Dimas Avenue, which is on the border, it's the borderline right there, and then pull it down a little bit so that, I'm sorry, pull it the other way, that way, yeah. Down a little bit more. Good, okay, that's great. So what I'm looking at here, and for anybody who's not familiar with the streets, is the town, what I'm going to call Old Town, okay, or Town Core, as some old timers call it, but let's call it Old Town. And you'll see it's on a nice grid pattern. You'll see the numbered streets start with first and go up to 6th on the left side of the San Dimas Avenue, but on the east side it just goes up to 5th. So what concerns me, and I did a little canvassing over the weekend and even up to a few minutes before the meeting, and I was calling people and asking them who live in this area what they think. And the majority of the people, so I don't know if, Jeff, you could kind of circle around that area right there, yeah, between a little bit lower where Gladstone is. See Gladstone, Gladstone's right there, yeah.
Yep.
So over in the green, the other green, over to the right, I guess they're both green. Down to Bonita, you don't have to move it around. I'm just trying, I wish I had a pointer. Has anybody got a pointer?
Yep.
Just get it on the, thank you very much, Brad. So if you, Jeff, if you could pull it down so that the rest of the town, when I say down, I mean, can you make the top go downward? The other way.
Do you want?
Great, and then make it so that it shows more of the west. There, well, okay, never mind. That's fine. That's fine. So this area right here, between Gladstone and Bonita, and between Walnut and San Dimas. I don't know how many people I talked to in there. There were a few who said it didn't matter. So districts, besides being mad at having districts, it didn't matter to them whether they were in the same district as over here in the rest of the town core, or if they were in their own district or went up to the mountains, or it didn't matter where they went, as a matter of fact, for those folks. But the people that did have an opinion about which district they would actually rather be in, to a person, and it wasn't scientific, and there wasn't, but I will tell you there were plenty of people of color in this survey, plenty. They all said, we are part of the town core over here. We don't want to be separated from these people over here. So that's the problem I have with all the maps except for 127. And I'm not married to 127, it's just that I think it's important, we talk about communities, the people that, the person that lives here, right here on the corner of Iglesia and 2nd Street, right kitty corner from the park. Young family moved in there, and they do all their stuff that's in San Dimas around here. And so to be distinct from this side over here, and then to be, more in a foothill type of district, it doesn't seem to keep that community together. And that's why 127 is my favorite of the 5, because it's the only one that does this. Now, there may be others that would do this, and maybe 105, if it was tweaked, could do the same thing, because 105 did do a pretty good job of doing it below 5th Street, but above 5th Street, it was saying, well, that's really the foothills area, and I'll tell you, living right there, I'm all my life in San Dimas, I figured I was part of the downtown residential area. So that's my comments on that particular aspect of the choice tonight, is that I think that's really important. And by the way, I also called people in Villa Verde, and just while I'm talking about this kind of thing, it was probably called and got emails and you know, but it was probably 1/3 to 2/3, where 1/3 said going up across Walnut Creek into the Manchester, you know, west of Valley Center area was the best, and about 2/3 said, no, we should have Benelli Park, we should be part of, Villa Verde should be like Benelli Park and the Pudding Stone area.
I think one of the disadvantages, and this is just, you know, a general comment about districting, one of the general disadvantages of implementing districts in a city like San Dimas is that we are in relation to cities that have much larger land masses and much larger populations that, you know, rolled out districts to begin with to more appropriately represent the different areas in their city. We don't really have a large city landmass-wise. We don't have a large city population-wise. So I hear what you're saying, that, you know, it'd be nice to include the numbered streets east of San Dimas Avenue. I just don't know that it's, at some point, looking at it, essentially the size of San Dimas is probably smaller than one district in a larger city. And we're, you know, zooming into finite levels to each individual block and streets and really analyzing this. But to say that, you know, I go to church in this particular area, and I live in this particular area, and I should be able to go to church and live in the voting district that you know, represents me, or I should go to the store in the voting district that represents me. It's just not practical for our city and our size. And looking at neighboring cities that have already gone to districts, it poses challenges. But I don't think that that being the goal, you know, doing business only in your district is really something that we could, is practical to achieve, number one, or that would be healthy for the city long term. Because we are a big community, and I think that's why I like San Dimas so much, is that I guarantee you that on a weekly basis I spend money or frequent restaurants or go to every single one of any of the districts that are on any of the maps that we've seen. So
I'm just going to make one comment, and it's about the demographics of the downtown area. And obviously downtown doesn't have enough population to be its own district. I don't know for a fact about all the other parts of the city. All I know is that there are a ton of young people moving into the downtown area. A ton of young people with little kids, with having babies. And I mean, I could probably think of 3 people right now who are pregnant in the downtown area and are going to have babies, and they're strolling people around in their strollers at this time already. And so when I talk to people and they say, we like the vibe of the downtown area, it's not because they don't want to go to other parts of the city. I mean, they go to Benelli Park, they go to, you know, all over the place, Horseshoe Canyon Park and wherever, you know, mountain bike and Benelli Park, all that kind of stuff. Do their T-ball and Little League over at Marchand Park. So they're obviously going out of their little area. But they like the vibe of the downtown, and I don't know, and I, of course, have been talking about this for years, but the folks that are coming in, they like they see the potential. They see, I cannot, and they say it, I mean, weekly, if not more often, that I hear people saying, we can't wait till downtown gets going because we have, so you saw the comments on Nextdoor about the barbecue restaurant, maybe. I don't know, there was like 288 last comments that like, yeah, the barbecue restaurant's coming because they are just so hungry, literally and figuratively, for stuff like that to happen. So this is my final comment about it. If it's split down that San Dimas Avenue, that's fine. I'm on the east side, I'm on the west side of the street, and that district is a fine district for me to work in, work for, and represent, as I've been doing all these years. And frankly, I think it's a good district. And but that's the last thing I'll say about that. If we could somehow get that block from Gladstone to Bonita, from Walnut to San Dimas, into the rest of the downtown, a whole lot of people would be happy.
So John, as I'm messing with it on my iPad here. Okay.
I know, I've got it up over here.
So you're talking about specifically on this map right here.
Yeah, any map that doesn't have that in it, but yes, this is a good example.
All right, so what if you took, for that district on the left, starting the teal, or I don't know, what color is that?
Ryan, which map is this?
This is 131.
131.
So if you took the teal, I guess, and you went from San Dimas Avenue to Walnut, south to Bonita, and then add that to the teal district. No, Gladstone's too high. From 4th Street.
So you're saying 4th Street south then?
Right, 4th Street and then south to Bonita. Right, exactly. And then go.
The problem is the population starts.
Hold on, we'll get there. And go to the green and go up. And then the green guy, the green district right there. And then get the green selector tool. And then green everything around that pocket to the left.
Here?
Yep. All the way to Amelia. So that gets, keep going. Right there, that pocket. So that gets the deviation down to the same. It actually takes it increases the Hispanic representation to 44.6. It should if you go to that, and then the voting population 41.4, right?
And Jeff, can you do the population itself too? That's
and it maintains the Asian population.
Can I ask you to do one other change to that? Actually, two, just variations on what you're saying, because Ryan, I like where you're going with it. So what would happen if you see along Amelia there, north of where your hand is right there, there's a green part that's to the east of Amelia. Yeah, that green.
So
east of Amelia, south of Allen?
No, right there. And then, I'm sorry, so over to the west of that.
That's all those pool supply, commercial stuff.
Just to the west of, it's where Shoal School is, so just to the left of where your hand is there. Yeah, change that whole area to green.
So these census blocks here?
Right.
Got
it. That one actually on the east or west of the 57 freeway doesn't have any people. That's just a public storage. And then zoom out a little bit. So
if you pick up take the next block north of 4th.
That's what I'd like to see about that, what happens there.
Just take it up to 5th. You'll get 44.7 population.
So this area here?
Yep. And then 41.4 still for the voting population.
And you want to put this into the teal district?
Yes,
They're suggesting.
That's what, John, you good with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we're still going to need to take some population away somewhere. The last block I know it's a weird little area, but just that block north of 5th that is on San Dimas Avenue and that green rectangle, Jeff, right there.
This one?
Yeah, let's just see what that does to the population and everything else.
And put this into the teal?
Yeah.
Take that up to Gladstone.
Like that. The reason I say that is because that's, if you go up San Dimas Avenue, you got the old houses on both sides of the street all the way to Gladstone. That's kind of the reason for that. I don't know where we are with different populations and stuff like that. Did it
took it took it down a smidge, but it's still, and it took the voting population down from 41.4 to 41.2.
It's still a majority, though, which is pretty amazing. Well, I'm better with that. I know that I've got some folks I know up on Gladstone that aren't going to be happy.
That's acceptable to you?
But what is west of San Dimas Avenue, south of Allen look like? Putting it in the teal.
Okay, which way?
So it's right at the top.
So it'd be
Jeff Simonetti. It'd be up there, right there. Yeah, change that block.
Right there, that block there.
Well, let's see. So
Right
this
there.
block?
That block, where your finger's at.
Yep. Let's just make sure we're okay on population here.
Bumps it up a little bit. See, what I would do, too, is like...
I don't consider that the town core up there.
No.
Yeah, there's just some folks that are on Gladstone there that are the older part of town. But we need to take population away, and I'm thinking on the very west end, there's a little bit below Cienega that might...
So what's the population there, the way we just did that there? Oh, so we're looking at 44.3, is that what we're doing for the Hispanic population?
Yes.
There. Add that notch there.
The notch is a little annoying.
So these?
Yeah, just add it, just so, since we're...
Probably getting pretty close to being unbalanced population. One thing we have to be careful of.
So I know we're tweaking it more. Maybe this is more than tweak. Maybe this is minor modifications. But zoom out and go way to the west. You don't have to zoom out all the way, but go way to the west. And I don't know what it would do if you took out what's below the railroad tracks on the west side. So the railroad tracks is if you added that to the orange district, I mean, I don't know if that would help. I don't know what it would do, actually. Yeah, just that one where your hand is on.
So these in here?
Yeah. That might put orange up a little bit too high, I don't know. I mean, it brought down the town core.
So let me do the math and make sure that that's still population balanced.
I got to be honest, I'm not opposed to making some tweaks, but I think now we've changed every single of the three sides of that particular district.
Yeah, I'm back at 131 because we've gone too far on this map.
I think we've taken the town core south a little bit more than I would think we would.
Well, you know, it's so
Charter Oak Mobile Home Estates. That's not the town core.
Right, because this district isn't only the town core, just like Villa Verde, and town core is even more. So there's not enough people to represent a district. So you've got to have basically 2 communities of interest or multiple, whatever you want to say.
I agree with John, and I think it's actually somewhat advantageous to have a couple of different, types of communities within a district. If we can do that, I wasn't, to be honest with you, with the Gladstone on the north end being the dividing line, I didn't think that was that bad. And I was even, because it balanced out the population going east of St. Dimas Avenue, I don't think I'm that disagreeable to that.
I think I struggle with that because there are people on the north side of Gladstone that identify with the downtown and feel strongly their connection to that representation. So I'm partial towards Allen being the...
it might be one of those trade-offs. Are we going to include the people that identify with downtown east of St. Dimas Ave, or are we going to include the ones on the north end of Gladstone? Which ones are...
I like what you said earlier. I mean, for the purposes of working through something, I was open to looking at that. But I think St. Dimas Avenue was used as a main dividing line generally from Allen all the way through Villa Verde. And, John brought that up at the last meeting that, that was a good use of St. Dimas Avenue on a north-south threshold rather than the freeway. And I think that was a good observation that to me makes sense, and to the point you both raised, that I think it's important to have diversity and representation in the districts of these different features, whether it's a mobile home park, whether it's the actual parks themselves, or even the open space issues. I think all of those things are unique, but diversity in the electorate and in the community is going to help ensure that those interests get 3 votes in some capacity from a representative body that should be empathetic to all of those things, as long as we try to make sure they're spread out among the different districts while representing those communities.
If we took the east side of San Dimas Avenue, that square right there, and put it back into the orange, what does that do?
And so you're saying put all the...
I think that was in the green to begin with. Do you want it in the orange?
Yeah, in the green. I'm sorry.
Okay, so everything that's in teal put...
It takes it out of the town core.
Yeah.
Is there a way, Jeff, can you save this as just a...
Sure.
I don't know, just as a thought. Let's call it thought A. Or you can, that's just being facetious, whatever you want to call it.
Okay, and then so you were suggesting putting all this area that's currently in teal, you want to put that into the green or the orange district?
Green.
Green. Got it. Yeah, this would not be population balanced because the green would be too small. I'm pretty sure. Let me again do the math. Hold on 1 second.
It would now? Down to 81. The teal area. Okay. All right.
Well, I think we could do this till the cows come home, to be honest with you. So I'm going to make a motion that the city council select map 131 and move forward with discussions into I'm trying to read this thing here.
131 as it exists.
As proposed, is analyzed as the public and all of us have had the opportunity to review. And then we can have a discussion about selecting, which districts will be up when. Jeff?
Yeah, that works. I just want to be really clear that the council's not adopting that map tonight. You're selecting it to attach to our ordinance to introduce tonight.
Right.
But time-wise, can any changes be made next week? I don't, can they, or?
We would get into a situation where we would be getting into legal gray areas about missing the deadline if we attempted to do that.
Yeah, so the introduction has to, I think what you're saying is the introduction of the ordinance has to include the map that we're actually going to adopt next Tuesday.
Essentially, yes.
So I'll wait for a second before I comment.
We have a motion.
I'm, like I stated, I think, at the beginning of all this, I think 131 is a decent balance. I don't know that there's any perfect maps out there, but I think it accomplishes our goals, and I could get on board with it, so I'll second that motion.
Could you bring 131 back up, please?
Yep. 131 is right there.
And can you pull up the demographic data really quick?
Yes.
Both population and voting. Okay.
I'd like to, there was a second on this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. So on this,
excuse me, before we go too far, and I realize there's a motion on the floor, but I want to apologize. And a question was, and I think this is probably a screw up on my part. As someone offered me a question that says, can we ask to see what the black population? It's the only thing we've talked about in District 2 is 6.3. The maps only that we've been looking at only shows Hispanic, white, and Asians. Is there a way that we can squeeze this in?
Mm-hmm.
And I apologize for the tardiness of the comment.
Yep. Hold on one moment.
Yep. 4.2 and 2. 38 and 3.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, since it pertains to the California Voters' Right Act, I would like to ask the consultant to speak to, in looking at unrepresented or the other ethnic backgrounds, what's the criteria that the California Voting Right and the Federal Voting Right Act would apply in consideration?
So really the Federal Voting Rights Act and Jeff M., we can, if you also want to discuss this as well, really pertains to whether you can draw a majority seat. And in the instance for both the Asian and the African American citizen voting age population in the city, there's not, as you can see by the percentages, there's not the ability to draw, a majority seat within the city.
Well, let me reframe it then. Based on the data that you see, is there a way to drop a majority district that's black?
No.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
And I pulled up the demographic data from 2020, and it looks like every single district has almost double in most cases. In 2, 3, and 4, it's almost double the citizen voting age population for African Americans. The citizen voting age population across the entire city for African American residents is 2%. So we're looking 1.4% above in District 1 and dang near 2% above in all the others. So just pulled it up on the city's website.
Sorry, just, sorry about that. I'm looking at District R, what we're using here, and I can get the populations, I think, if I... Jeff Simonetti, do you have that, the percentage population for black residents, or for the whole city, yeah, the whole city? There's a way of doing it. I forgot what it was. I just thought it was more than that, Eric.
It was San Dimas redistricting presentation slide.
Down. You're right, Jeff Malavi. It's at the bottom right there where it says 3.9% for the population, and then below the voting might be about the same, I'm thinking, but I don't.
Yes, the one on the top is your overall population. So yes, it's 3.9%.
What's the voting age population total?
3.8%.
So yeah, I think there was an error in the staff report, Eric.
Yeah, could be.
All right, any further, John?
Yeah, so Ryan was correct when he said that I thought San Dimas was could be a good dividing line if you were to divide Villa Verde that way, and down in Villa Verde, if you're going to divide Villa Verde that way and not include Valley Park. However, and we were talking about that little slice with is it Sorrento or whatever
where
the retirement home is, right in that area. We were talking about that triangle right there. But in the town core, I will tell you that San Dimas Avenue is not so much a dividing line, but a defining line. It defines where the town core emanates from. It's like a trunk with branches, and they go in both directions. And so, you know, if we want, it's not bad to divide it into two if that's what our intention is to do. And I think it's best to keep that part of the town core with the rest of the town core, as many of my constituents have said. That's just my thoughts on that.
I don't disagree with the notion of that, but when I look at that, I see two council members voting on something in common versus one fighting, perhaps unsuccessfully. So when I look at that, and say, well, there's opportunity for people to work together and have something in common, like the holiday parade, like putting your flags out during all the holidays, as the residents do there together. Community's not defined by whatever we vote on tonight. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing we all need to remember is this is just about voting districts, but it doesn't define who we are as a community and as a city. So I hear what you're saying, but I almost think in one aspect it's more advantageous for some residents to have those interests, because I think, as we all know, all of us have been on one end or the other of a vote, and you know, I think there is some benefit to being able to have common interest.
Dennis, any comments? Yeah, I think something that was just said is that, and I think John alludes to it, Ryan alludes to it, I think everybody realizes it. We're doing this exercise for the betterment of the community, okay, and for the betterment of the entire community. And, you know, maybe long past due, but the reality is we are one community. We are not 4 separate communities, or at least that is my belief. And I would assume that everybody sitting up here at this table, at this dais, has that same belief. We are one community, and we need to work together as one. When Ryan says, well, I see 3 councilmen, you know, talking about one issue and they could get together on it and stuff like that. Well, we all know that in time, some of those issues are going to flare up into our face, and we're going to have those issues. But for me today, I want to make us one community and everything that we do, and I would hope that everybody understands that I don't believe anybody up here intentionally wants to separate or negate any of the conversation. So as we vote, I will tell you that I'm going to support map 131, and I'll call for a vote. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Okay, the motion carries 3-2. Map 131, 73950 will be what goes forward, but it's just, this is for purpose of the ordinance, not for adoption.
That's right. That'll be attached to the ordinance that you have tonight. And just for the record, Councilmember Ebner and Bertone are those that voted no on that item.
Okay, and as I understand, you said that we would be in a time crunch if we, you know, decided back before adoption to do something.
That's right.
How big a time crunch would we be in?
The 23rd is the last day that I would advise you to adopt the ordinance, and that's what we're going to do once you introduce the ordinance tonight. Is we'll bring it back for a final public hearing on the 23rd for adoption of the ordinance.
Okay, if in fact we decided that something needed to be changed, would we make the time frame? I mean, it would not work.
No.
Okay. All right.
And I thought that other idea had some worth that was basically this map, except with some small changes, and that was the thought, A map as we called it. It was so similar that, and you could have got me on board with that one. And it's fine having a 3-2 vote, but it would be better to have a unanimous vote.
It would absolutely be better 5-0.
And the only way that could change is if one of the 3 who voted in favor would change their minds.
So I think the other piece of business then is to decide the sequencing. Then consistent with, I think, staff's recommendation with 101, if I recall correctly, Mr. Simonetti, the recommendation was on map 101 that it would be districts 1 and 3 that were labeled would be up in 2024, and then 2 and 4 would be up in 2022. Is that correct? And the mayor would be at large?
Yeah, just give me one moment and I'll pull it up for you. Okay. Yes, so we had, if you were asking about 101, yes, it was 2 and 4, and again, this was just the proposal. 2 and 4 would be in 2022, and 1 and 3 would be in 2020.
What's your recommendation for 131?
Yep. Same thing.
All right, so I would move that we adopt the recommended sequencing as proposed by the consultant as it relates to map 131.
I'll second.
Okay, what is your motion again?
That it was consistent with the recommendation of 101 specifically to 131. So districts 1 and 3 would be up for re-election in 2024, districts 2 and 4 in 2022, and the mayor would remain at large.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Okay, Mayor, so those are all the changes that we needed to the ordinance that's attached to the staff report tonight. So now what would be proper is to make a motion, or we'll first have the clerk read the title of the ordinance and then a motion to waive further reading and introduce the ordinance with map 131 attached to the ordinance as Exhibit A, and in section 4 of the ordinance, fill in the blanks so that it says Council Districts 2 and 4 will be up for election in 2022, and Council Districts 1 and 3 will be up for election in 2024.
And that will be my motion as moved once it's introduced.
Madam Clerk, could you read the ordinance?
Ordinance 1292, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of San Dimas, California, amending Chapter 2.04 of the San Dimas Municipal Code to establish a district-based system of elections for members of the City Council.
And waive further reading and moved as outlined by the city attorney.
Second that.
All in favor?
Mr. City Attorney, is a substitute motion in order, which would be to substitute thought A for
Mike.
Yeah, microphone's on. Would a substitute motion be in order to substitute thought A map? Substitute thought A map instead of map 131.
Yes, it would be in order.
Okay, so I'm going to make a substitute motion, and that is to use thought A map. If we could bring that up, Jeff, real quick, so we know what we're voting on. I would waive further reading and introduce the ordinance using thought A as the attachment, and whatever number that refers to.
And for the sequence, could you put the district numbers up there? Could you put the numbers up there of the districts?
Sure.
And just for the record, we'll introduce it as addition. We'll map 82125 on District R.
So for the sequence of elections, the motion would be for, it would be the same, right, as before?
Yes.
With 2 and 4 in the 2022 election, and then 1 and 3 in the 2024 election.
Yes.
You know, when I'm looking at, explain to me if I'm seeing something wrong. When I'm looking at 3, I'm seeing that to the south, or I'm sorry, to the east of, showing from San Dimas Avenue to Walnut right there. It's there. I thought we took that out.
No, I asked that this be saved, and so my motion.
Saved.
Yeah, so my motion is that this map be the one attached to the ordinance, and with the same sequence.
Okay, so how are you differing than what we just passed?
This is a substitute motion, so the way it works is we get to vote on if there's a second on the substitute motion first. If that fails, then we go back to the original motion. It's just a way you can do things. And so we're changing this, which is basically 131 with a couple changes to add the town core, to make the town core whole, if you want to call it that, and for population balancing to add a little bit, to take a little bit away from it in the corners there on the more of the western part of the.
And all the rest of it stays the same?
All the rest of it is 131 is the same. Yeah.
I think just a comment on that before we get down to the business of voting on the substitute motion. This was the point at which we paused the map tweaks, and I kind of mentioned that we've changed now in District 3 every single boundary on the north, east, and south sides of District 3. I don't disagree with you that there was something that was, I think, constructive on maybe looking at swapping the north and east boundaries, but just my 2 cents, we've changed too much of this, and the population deviation is way larger than any of the other maps that we were considering, and I just don't know that that would be something that I'd be in favor of.
I agree. This one
I
got
don't even know
too
if we have
far
a
out
second
to
yet on
see.
it, so
Yeah, if I may raise a procedural question, there is only a substitute motion. There is a motion. There needs a second to be able to deliberate it. If there's no second, it dies, and you go back to the first motion.
I'll second John's motion.
Okay, all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No.
We'll go back to the original motion.
So that fails with Councilmember Ebner and Bertone in the minority, and it failed 3-2.
Mr. Mayor, please call the question.
Okay. We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Passes 4-1.
And
I voted in favor.
you voted in favor. So the council member voting no is Councilmember Ebner. So this means that the ordinance has been introduced tonight with map 131 attached as Exhibit A to the ordinance. And the sequence is districts 2 and 4 in the 2022 election and districts 1 and 3 in the 2024 election. So we will bring this back for the final public hearing on the 23rd of November for the second reading and the adoption.
And Jeff, that includes the mayors at large as well, correct?
Yes, the mayor stays at large.
Thank you.
Okay. City manager report?
I have no report this evening.
City attorney?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Members of the city council? Council members report on meetings attended at the expense of the local agency? Hearing none, city council requests for future items, comments, and updates. Dennis?
I have nothing.
Ryan?
I'll say that I think no one here has any reason not to look at what we've done and be proud of where we've gotten thus far. I think that the map that we voted on, I think achieves what we sought out to achieve thus far. And I think ultimately for all members of the community who have called and wrote and expressed their thoughts and their concerns specifically as it relates to this process, it's very interesting. I think that someone brought to my attention today that in the last election that the attorney that brought the threat of litigation against the city cited racially polarized voting is why candidates weren't successful. And yet, if you add up the total amount of votes cast for Latino candidates in the last election, they exceeded the number of votes cumulatively that went for any of the succeeding individuals that won that election. Just two candidates alone had over 4,800 votes when you total the votes that were cast for a Latino or Hispanic candidate. So I think what we've done today, I think, is a step further to ensure that the representation has more opportunity to be able to be successful in an election. And I'm excited for that and the opportunity that that brings to the city, because the city is diverse, as it's been pointed out here. And I think tonight we voted on a map that many people think is fair. The population distribution is equitable. The commonality of interests exists, not just in one particular district, but there are commonalities in districts that I think will bring people together and make sure that the 5 people that are sitting here long after we're gone are going to be people that really do have empathy for all of the different facets of what our community is. The small bedroom town with, as some said, good for raising your family. I'm deeply concerned about Mr. Jose Luis Calderon's comments as it relates to his experience in the school. And as I've said before, I hope that the city manager will express and carry those comments over to the school board. This isn't the first time that those issues are brought up here, to the city. And I do think, as I expressed in the past when these issues have been brought forward to this body, that there should not be tolerance for those types of things in our schools or in our school district. And I do hope that you let me know that you talk to Mr. Coles about it so that we can make sure that they're doing everything they can and that their board hears those comments. To that extent, I thank all the members of the community so far that have participated in this process. I know there's a lot of different feelings about the necessity of the process, but we did it, and we're on our way. And I think we're going to be in a better space for it moving forward. So thank you, everybody. And that's all I have. Have a good week. And I hope everybody had a good, that's the last thing. I want to commend Heroes and Mr. Gary Anderley and everyone that put all their work into Veterans Day. The event was very nice over at Freedom Park on Veterans Day. Thank you to all of our veterans. I know John was there, the mayor was there. I know Eric was honoring his day somehow. And, bottom line is, it was a great event, and it's great seeing people come back together. So I applaud all the stakeholders that put that event together. It was very well done. And as always, it honors our service members very well. Thanks.
Eric? Just to mention that on Wednesday last week after our meeting, I attended a spaghetti dinner fundraiser for the charity that we've been raising money for through charity hockey games and such. But this is a spaghetti dinner fundraiser at the St. Dimas Masonic Lodge to raise money for Making Spirits Bright, which is that charity that is aiming to donate Christmas presents to the kids of Marines stationed at 29 Palms and Camp Pendleton this holiday season. And they raised a considerable amount of money during that dinner fundraiser. I think it was in excess of $3,000 for the program, which should fund it for quite a few toys, which is fantastic. And then we also celebrated the 246th birthday of the Marine Corps. So happy birthday to Mr. Mayor, who's a former Leatherneck himself. And I had a fantastic Veterans Day, celebrated it with my wife, who's also a veteran. And I'm sad that we didn't make it to the Heroes Memorial, but we were out of town on a family trip, and it did look like it was well attended and a fantastic event. So congratulations to Heroes on that.
Thank you, John.
Just one of the members of the audience asked if there could have been a better process, and a better process would have probably included more time, for one thing, and then if we had had more time, I think we would have had, or I would hope we would have, more roundtables and sessions where we'd get the public involved and in some rooms and really hash things out. But be that as it may, I think we had as good of a process as we could get. I was happy to see 38 maps. That's pretty good. They had like 5 days to do it or something like that, or a week, I can't remember exactly. So that was pretty good. Although I voted against this ordinance, probably make it unanimous at the next meeting when we adopt. And I'll end by saying that I was talking to a couple of people on San Dimas Avenue, And one lady said, well, you know, it's going to be okay whatever we do because we're still going to have the Christmas light contest on San Dimas Avenue, aren't we? So I said, I hope so. But and then Halloween, you know, it's a crazy thing on San Dimas Avenue. Going to still have it. So as you were saying, Ryan, the community, it's like some people like city council. What's that? You know, even right there in the town core. So anyhow, that's all I have to say. We'll make the best we can of it.
Sorry.
Dennis.
131 to the audience is not a bad map. I know it's disappointing that you didn't get 105, but it actually has a higher Hispanic population than 105. As I said, I didn't mind 105, but I think that the whole community is being served. And I think any of these maps would allow for any minority to be elected. Even though it's not a majority, it's still someone who go out there and works hard who will be able to be elected. So in the end, I think we did well. We could have done better maybe and maybe not, but I think we did well. And I don't think that you should be disappointed. I think that if you want to support a candidate, the candidate would have a very good chance of winning. And I think that's it. Good luck to everyone.
You know, as I said earlier, we are one community. We may be broken up in 4 different districts, but we're one community, and the only thing that can break that is us, we as a community. And I agree with John. There could have been maybe a better process, but I believe the Census Bureau didn't help us out with any of those numbers that we needed to get, and the information that we needed to proceed, it kept being delayed. And so yes, you're absolutely right. There could have been probably a better process, and I apologize for that, but it's not much that the city could do with that. While I was here, I received some information earlier that a long-term city councilman in the city of Arcadia, Roger Chandler, passed yesterday. Roger has been with and probably every position in our region that you could imagine. He was on every commission, every regional commission, on everything. He'll be greatly missed by the region, but more so by the city of Arcadia. And I would request that we close this meeting in his memory. Meeting adjourned.